Hello, and welcome to the final episode of Cooking with Jamie 2021. Today, we are ending with a hard-pressed, caffeinated bang and making 4 coffee recipes. Coffee is rich, luxurious, and distinctive, and I'm so excited to teach you how to use it in so many new ways. Now, for the final time, let's get started. The first 2 recipes we're making are both flank steak recipes. One of them is dry rubbed and one of them is marinated. So let's start with the dry rub. For our dry rubbed coffee and chili steak, you will need 1½ teaspoons chili powder, 1½ teaspoons fine ground coffee, ½ teaspoon brown sugar, 1/4 teaspoon dry mustard, 1/4 teaspoon ground coriander, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/4 teaspoon freshly ground black pepper, and 1½ pounds of flank steak. This recipe is pretty self-explanatory. Mix up all of our spices and coat the steak. Our next steak is a soy and coffee marinated steak. And for it you will need 4 tablespoons of salted butter, roughly 6 to 8 cloves of garlic, chopped, 1 yellow or red onion, chopped, 1 strong, very strong in this case, cup of coffee, 1 cup of soy sauce, 1/4 cup of Worcestershire sauce, 3 tablespoons white vinegar, 1 tablespoon crushed red chili flakes, and ½ a tablespoon dried oregano. You'll also need your flank steak. I chose to use the same flank steak for both of these recipes and just cut it in half. As always, we're going to start by mincing our garlic and chopping our onions. We're going to add that to a hot pan with a 1/4 cup of butter. Once the butter is melted, add the onions and garlic and cook until translucent. Now mix all of the spices and the coffee as well as the rest of our marinade ingredients. Add the onions and garlic directly from the pan. It's okay if it's hot. And mix that all up. You're going to pour this over the steak to coat. You can use the excess however you'd like. It will stay in the refrigerator for probably about 1.5 weeks to 2 weeks. Cover your coated steak with tin foil and let sit in the refrigerator overnight. The next day, the steaks look great when taken out of the refrigerator. If you'd like to use the excess marinade to baste your steak while cooking, I would do so by adding about 1 tablespoon onto your steak every 2 minutes. You're going to cook both of these steaks on a hot cast iron pan with oil for about 10 minutes aside. Once they're done, let them rest for a few minutes until nice and bouncy to the touch. Then we're going to cut them against the grain. Next, we're going to make some coffee and spiced roasted vegetables. For this recipe, you're going to need 4 large carrots, whole and unpeeled, and washed, 3 to 4 beets, scrubbed down but not peeled, 1/4 cup of olive oil, and 1 tablespoon cumin seeds, 1 tablespoon fennel seeds, and 1 tablespoon whole coriander, and 1/2 cup of whole coffee beans, medium roast. I used some local beans from Leelanau. What you're going to do is simply combine all of the spices onto the sheet pan and coat all of your vegetables in the olive oil. Nestle those vegetables really nicely into the beans and spices to make sure that they're at least half coated. Now you're going to bake it at 375 for approximately an hour or until all the vegetables are tender. Once the vegetables are out of the oven and nice and cool, you can peel the beets and cut the carrots. And serve this however you like. I served mine on a bed of kale, pine nuts, and garlic. I cooked it in a saucepan for a few minutes until the kale was nice and tender, and it worked really well under these vegetables. By doing this recipe, you are going to get vegetables that taste richer, deeper, with a little hint of coffee, as well as those extra flavors from the spices. It's not going to be too strong, but it will be noticeable, especially when served alone. I think it's absolutely delicious and a really beautiful, sophisticated way to use up any excess coffee beans you have. Because remember, whole coffee beans are only usable for about a week or two after opening. No matter how you store it, once that air seal is opened, the coffee beans have a numbered lifespan. So using them in a recipe like this is a really easy way to use them up. Now, the next recipe is one of my many takes on a classic tiramisu. I could probably do an entire series on the amount of tiramisu-inspired recipes I do, and this one is easily one of my favorites, because we're making cookie sandwiches. For the cookies, you're going to need 2 1/4 cup of flour, 1 cup unsalted butter softened, 1 1/2 cup granulated sugar, 2 eggs, 2 tablespoons fresh ground coffee, 1 teaspoon vanilla, and 1 teaspoon baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon salt. The first step is to cream the butter and the sugar in a large bowl. After that, you're going to add in the eggs, coffee, and vanilla, and whisk until incorporated. Now, you're not going to want to use a whisk right away. What you're instead going to want to do is use a wooden spoon or spatula to press and scrape the butter and sugar against the edges of the bowl until well combined. After that, you can whisk. Now I'm adding the coffee, eggs, and they're looking pretty good. Once your mixture is done, combine the flour mixture really slowly, in about 3 stages. This flour already has the baking powder and salt in it. Now, for this step I would recommend using parchment paper. I only had wax paper, which is why I ripped a little bit, but you're going to roll your dough into a log in order to refrigerate it, because you will need to refrigerate this overnight. Because with any cookie recipe that has a lot of butter in it, you gotta bake them when they're cold. Once the dough is out of the refrigerator, it's super easy to just chop it up and put the cookies on a sheet pan. Of course, using parchment paper as the base. Once the cookies are baked for about 8 to 10 minutes, let them cool, and then you can start making the ice creams, and then you can start making the sandwiches. I'm just scooping a little bit of mascarpone cheese and some cinnamon between the cookies. Another way you can do this is the way in which the recipe is written, which is to whisk some mascarpone and heavy cream until nice and fluffy. Either way you do this, they're really delicious cookies, and I hope you enjoy. And that's all I have for you today, folks. And actually, that's all I have for you this summer. I hope you guys had a lot of fun, and I hope that you try out some of the recipes I did. As always, you can find these recipes on the Benzonia Public Library website, or you can go into the library and get a printed out copy handed to you. I hope you had fun this summer, and I can't wait to see you again. Bye-bye! I'd really like to thank the library for letting me do this, giving me a lot of creative freedom and a lot of trust, and I hope that I made the most of it.